Good morning and welcome to Behind the Screen. I am JM, your host, your guide, as we take a look at games that we love. That's the whole point of Behind the Screen, to kind of give a GM's insight to things that are interesting, beautiful, amazing in gaming. Now, before we start, I have two massive announcements. First of all, we passed 1,000 subscribers on YouTube. So first of all, thank you to everybody who subscribed on YouTube. This is awesome. I'm currently exporting my subscriber list as an Excel file, and we're going to do a giveaway of the Fading Suns core set from the Kickstarter. We're going to give it away randomly. Anyone affiliated with Iconic Production is going to be invalidated from said list. So I'm going to get all this put together. I'm going to get a set of random number generators, and we're going to do a short stream sometime next week to see who gets all of this cool stuff. So, thank you for that. I am very excited about that. Before I make the other announcement, good morning to Grom and Mark and John and Tink and DM James. Good to have you there, man. Good to see you. You guys are on your way to PAX Unplugged right now. Awesome. Say hi to Jody and the crew. Someday we're going to be at the same con at the same time, and I would love to go out and get a drink with you and just talk about Savage Worlds. And yes, John Doom is running our Savage Pathfinder Rise of the Rune Lords campaign that Tink and I are playing in, and if he couldn't figure it out from last night, we're all just very, very excited. Yes, I will be at Gen Con next year, DM James, so we will definitely find some time to hang out then. Now, the other announcement is sort of twofold. The first is next week, tomorrow, we start Mala's Advent. So if you're not following us on Instagram, please do so. Tink is putting together a 25-day celebration of images and quotes from the Malazan Books of the Fallen. I'm providing the quotes and the books that she's taking pictures from, and they are going to look spectacular. So we're going to start Mala's Advent tomorrow. And then for the behind the screens in December, we're going to talk about Malazan Books of the Fallen, which you can't be around me and not hear about the Malazan, or technically Malazan series. I'm going to try and not make that mistake, the Malazan series, because I'm evangelical of kind of about three things. Pretty open about my faith, pretty open about gaming, and very open about Malazan Books of the Fallen. So the reason I am mentioning this is because our next Beyond the Table, which is scheduled for December 7th at 2 o'clock Central, I'm going to get to host Steven Erickson and Ian Esselmont, the two Malaz authors themselves, and talk with them on a stream on Twitch on this channel with both of them. We're going to talk about the themes of the book. We're going to talk about the origins of the book. We're talking about the gaming history of the book. And I can't wait. I said it wrong again. Yeah, thanks, John. You got to correct me. I don't want to go into this interview and be like, Malazan. They're going to be like, Malazan. I'm like, crap, right. Malazan. Maybe I'll have to put like the phonetic spelling. I have this big glass tabletop, and I'll just write out the phonetic spelling in front of me. So every time I go to say it, I'll just drop my eyes down and then look back up. So, if you have questions that you would like me to ask on stream, show up and ask them. But also, Tink posted on the Malazan subreddit. She's gathering questions from that people are asking there. I would love, I'll have a list of questions. I don't... every time I say Malazan, just I'll hear it. Just put that TSST sound in the chat if I say it, John, and I'll be like, yes, will train me by the end of it. So, very excited about that next week. There may be one more Beyond the Table this month. I'm trying to get that one scheduled. I'll let you know as soon as I do. But enough for announcements. We're here to talk about Savage Rifts. And really, we're going to look at the books 4 through 8, skipping book 7. I'll explain why. And just kind of let you guys know what is available for Savage Rifts and why you may want to pick up some of these extra books. Now, one of the things I love that they did with Savage Rifts is each of these books covers multiple Palladium supplements. Now, Palladium supplements are filled with gear and tech and robots and OCCs and all of these amazing things that make the Rifts books what they are. But if you strip out most of that for the setting, like the Rifts, Savage Rifts guys did, you can compress a lot of that into a single 180, 200-page book. So the first one we're going to look at is a book called Arcana and Mysticism. Now, Arcana and Mysticism really covers three main areas of the Rifts North America. It covers the Spirit West, which is the area kind of west of the Mississippi that is dominated by the more mystical aspects of the New West. The Magic Zone and Federation of Magic, which we sort of talked about, which is the area kind of across the central Midwest, so south of Illinois and Ohio, kind of north of Arkansas, where all of these different magical city-states and areas have kind of formed this federation of magic. You get the city of Dwemer, you get a lot of the city of Brass, Dragon's Blood, the Kingdom of Dunscan, which is really like the heart of darkness for Rifts North America, and Skyscape, which is kind of in the Ohio River Valley. And so all three of those were individual books in Palladium. All of them kind of come together here, linked by the fact that they are filled with magic, mysticism. So we get some new iconic frameworks. We talked about the Dragon Juicer before. The Elemental Fusionist, which is the weirdest OCC in Rifts. The weirdest one. Because it came about specifically for the Rifts video game. And you may be sitting there going, a Rifts video game? Why have I never heard about this? Because it released for the N-Gage. And if you go, what's the N-Gage? You're not alone. I don't even know what the N-Gage is. I just remember being really excited that it was coming out, and then just could never find an N-Gage, so never played the Rifts video game. The Elemental Fusionist is a psionic... No, I think they're a magic user. No, they're a psionic that kind of mixes... There's the Elementalist in Rifts, which is a magic user, and you pick, one of your elements. And this is sort of a bizarre blending of... You can be a fire, water, or an air, earth fusionist, and it's sort of always felt to me a little bit like taking two of the bending aspects from Avatar: The Last Airbender and kind of mashing them together. Yes, and check out Savage Universe, where we'll have the links available in 5 days. I'm looking forward to it. I can't wait to listen to this, DM James. So you also get the Nega Psychic, which is sort of an anti-psyker. They can suppress psionic abilities. Zappers, which we talked about, electrokinetics. And then some of the weird, great weird things in these books. The Cactus People, which is exactly what it sounds like. Psi Ghosts, which are... So there's an RCC in Rifts called the Psi Stalker. They're a divergent branch of humanity that it's speculated evolved because of the Rifts. They can track and consume the magical energy of monsters and demons and creatures of the Rifts. And they can hurt them when they may not be normally able to do that. And so there's Psi Stalkers, and then they introduce in Skyscape Psi Ghosts, which use their psionic abilities to make themselves invisible, intangible, and make themselves sort of the ultimate spies. Skyscape also has this great horrific thing going on in it called the Soul Harvest. There is a supernatural entity known as Nixla, the Harvester of Souls. And that's really what the plot point campaign is in here, is about. The Souls of Darkness is kind of this look at Skyscape and trying to get the Tomorrow Legion and the Skyscape to work together, but also the Soul Harvest is going on. Again, I'm not going to spoil too many things, but one of the things I love about these books is the fact that, man, one of the things I loved about Rifts was they didn't give you a whole lot of fleshed out campaigns. There were a couple of small adventures scattered throughout, like the Juicer Uprising. They had one large campaign arc, that the Tolkien War, which was told over a series of small adventures scattered about the 5 or 6 books that was the Tolkien War, with the Coalition going to war against this magical powerhouse and utterly crushing it. But aside from that, you really only got these small adventures, or small adventure hooks, which for Savage Worlds people were much more like Savage Tales than they were like plot point campaigns. So what they did is they took some of these very high concepts, these very high overarching meta plots that Palladium would give you all of the hooks to hang your own adventures on. And the guys at Pinnacle turned them into actual plot point campaigns, which I'm a big fan of. Just enough of a framework to actually run a campaign, but pretty loose enough to still do whatever you want with it. Padre, good to have you here. The next one we're going to talk about is Blood and Banes. And so Blood and Banes really focuses on the Vampire Kingdoms, the Zytisic Highlands, and the Mutant Lands. Really, Madhaven being the book that this is connected to. So again, 3 books: Vampire Kingdoms, Zytisic Highlands, and Madhaven. And essentially this covers a lot of the weirder aspects of Rifts. Madhaven is the ruins of New York. The Zytisic Highland, again, is this monstrous insectoid DB that's coming down from Canada down into North America, or into the old U.S. coalition states. And we mentioned that the Vampire Kingdoms kind of have taken over the Yucatan Peninsula. The plot point campaign deals with the Vampire Kingdoms. And how can I... Thanks a lot, John Doom. I can pronounce Malazan correctly. Part of my problem is that the audiobooks pronounce it Malazan, and so I've listened to the audiobooks on 2 of my 8 read-throughs have been audiobook listened to, so they're stuck in my head. Again, you get some cool new iconic frameworks. The shifter, which is interesting that it took so long for the shifter to hit Savage Rifts, because it's one of the core OCCs in the main rulebook. And it's basically a magic user who uses the rifts to their own advantage. You can play a necromancer, a heroic vampire, or my personal favorite, a knight of the White Rose. Which again is interesting to me that it's in this book and not in the previous one. Because the Knight of the well, I mean, it makes sense, because the Knight of the White Rose, I think, came out in the Madhaven book. So there are these mystic knights, which are sort of like anti-paladins, very evil magic user warrior mages in the Federation of Magic. And in Madhaven, you discover that some of them have encountered this entity known as the White Rose and are now set on a path of redemption. Loved playing Knights of the White Rose, so I was very excited to see sort of this reformed, this anti-paladin iconic framework become available. And they also cover the Calgary Mountain Kingdom, because there is a massive rift in Calgary where demons just constantly pour out of. And so we get a little bit more information on that. So let's see here. DM James says, a group of the Tomorrow Legionnaires will find themselves in the midst of a plot to open even more rifts on Earth. Love it. Not a great thing for Rifts Earth, but hopefully your Legionnaires can handle that. So we're going to take a break here and talk about the book that I wasn't going to talk about, which is the Tomorrow Legion Field Manual. It's just more options for players and a ton of small adventures, as well as a plot point campaign called The Final Solution, which is about coalition. I'm just going to leave it at that. But again, going back to that, if you've ever confused Nazi Germany with the coalition states, you may be playing just the right amount of Rifts. But the Tomorrow Legion is something new and wholly unique to Savage Rifts. And it goes back, I think, to, I mean, Ross Watson has done a lot of development for this game. And it goes back to this idea, and I don't know whether it was Ross's or Sean's. To me, it feels like a Ross idea, but I could be completely wrong. That having a strong, central, unified group identity and quest giver is something that helps guide the play experience at the table. And while Rift's Earth is nowhere near as massive as the 40K universe, it's still pretty intimidating. You've got the whole of North America, plus anywhere you want to go in the Rift's dimension or your own imagination. And so they've introduced this thing called the Tomorrow Legion. And the Tomorrow Legion is started by some Cyber Knights and some Dwarves and some heroes of renown. And exists as an organization very akin to the Twilight Legion of Deadlands. We know there are threats out there. We know there are supernatural and mortal threats out there that lie hidden behind different faces, different plots, different areas of the world. And by God, we're going to gather groups of people who can go out and deal with it. It's not something that Rifts ever had. The strongest group identity you could find, usually in a Rifts game, was, hey, we're playing, a group of dead boys, coalition soldiers. There's our group identity. The rest of it was, hey, we're this sort of, disparate group of cybernetically, magically, and psionically enhanced beings who have come together, much like, like a D&D adventuring party, where most D&D adventuring parties meet in a tavern and, gel into a group along the way. I don't know if they have anything to do with the Black Company Padre. That is a great link that I've never really thought about. But I would say that the people who are writing Rifts are too steeped in basically everything to ignore that connection. Yes, John. Are we the baddies? I mean, like, who's got a worse flag than we do? So yeah, the Tomorrow Legion, as a GM, it's something I would lean very heavily into for the first couple of Rifts games that I ran for people who may not be aware of Rifts, because it gives you a great starting point and a great way to get the group and the table to gel very quickly. Oh, they also have Murderthon in this book, which is a juicer sport where anything goes. It's a race where anything goes. And I mean, who doesn't love murder sports in the post-apocalyptic far future? All right, so then book 6 is Empires of Humanity, which, as you may imagine, focuses in on the coalition states. Gives you some more history into the prehistory of Rifts, the golden age of humanity, or golden age of mankind. It also adds in the Free Quebec. Right, Quebec was part of the coalition states and then ends up breaking away from the coalition states during the Coalition War Campaign book, then followed up with Free Quebec, and then also covers the New West. So again, 3 books from Palladium distilled into one book for Savage Rifts: Coalition War Campaign, Free Quebec, and the New West. You get to play things like mutant animals, Psi-X aliens, intelligent constructs, and the Momano Headhunter, which is this really cool DB mercenary character. I don't know that I ever had one at my table when I was running Rifts. And then Ex Machina actually brings a 4th Rifts book into effect. So on the East Coast, there is this thing called the Shanarian Nation. And in Rifts Sourcebook 1, you discover, I don't want to spoil too much, you discover that not all is as it seems with this nation, and that there is a leftover remnant from the golden age of mankind, a base in kind of the Baltimore, Maryland, DC area, a base from the US before the apocalypse, and that there is something still running there, and something which is trying to take over the world. That was another great little mini campaign in Rift Sourcebook 1. Man. So if you ever get into actual Rifts, there are sort of four main lines. So you have the source books, which are just sort of a potpourri of whatever Kevin and the crew wanted to write at the time. Some of it took inspiration from other games that Palladium had put out. There's the conversion book line, which helps you convert from other Palladium games to Rifts, as well as Pantheons of the Megaverse, which introduced just tons of gods. It's sort of like the Deity and Demigods book for Rifts. Then you had the Dimension books, which opened up different dimensions. And really you had, let's see if I can remember them from when I played. There was Wormwood, which we talked about, which is this battling demons on a symbiote-infested planet, based off a comic, I believe, or at least there was a lot of comics to the book. You had the Phase World Dimension books, which is all about the three galaxies, which is kind of their space opera setting. Scrapers, which was a superhero dimension book. And then I know that they did Hades and Dival, the two where demons and devils come from. And then they had a Megaversal War that kind of crossed between most of their game lines. And then you had the world books, which just explored a facet of the world. And Savage Rifts is drawing, I think, from all of them except the Dimension books. I'm really hoping. I know the next one that's coming in is South America, which is another great area to look at. But I'm really hoping that we're going to get like a Phase World supplement for Savage Rifts. I think once that hits, maybe once the Sci-Fi Companion hits, we'll see the Phase World stuff. No Such Agency, the NSA, the three-letter acronyms. I have won't get into that. Brain kicked in before I could say anything. But yes, the three-letter agencies, especially No Such Agency. And the last one, of course, is the one that just recently released, Atlantis and the Demon Seas, which covers the Demon Seas and Lemuria and humanity at sea. So that covers Rifts Underwater and Rifts Lemuria, and then also Atlantis. And I think it covers both Atlantis and the Splugorth market. And so Atlantis is no longer held by the Atlanteans in Rifts. It is held by these creatures known as the Splugorth, who use bio-wizardry to create construct slave races. And if you remember the original Rifts cover with that strange creature on a floating barge with tentacles and the scantily clad women warriors who were around it, those are all Splugorthian minions. Those are slavers that raid the coasts of North America to take slaves back to Splincrith, the capital of Atlantis, and send them off into various corners of the multiverse, or the Megaverse. We've got a ton of new iconic frameworks as well, right? You can play Bioborgs, which is a bio-wizardry cyborg, the Stone Master, Tattooed Warrior, and Undead Slayer, which are all true Atlantean archetypes that you can play. And then a ton of new races, which are all super weird from that book. And then finally, the plot point campaign is called With Spartacus, which, as you may imagine, has something to do with leading a slave revolt on Atlantis. And in Savage Worlds Edition, they've added a bit of pants for those warriors. Yeah, when I got my Rifts book, so before I got my Rifts book, my main role-playing games were Star Wars by West End Games and GURPS. I had some Glorantha stuff that I kept very hidden. But when I got the Rifts book, that was the first book with a cover that I knew my parents weren't going to appreciate. So being the Gen Xer that I am, I took a paper grocery bag and covered the book and wrapped it around so that I had like a protective cover, and then I drew the Rifts logo on the front. And that, I think, saved me for many, many years. But I will say, I did come home from college and all of my Rifts books were missing. So maybe that paper didn't hold up as well as I had hoped. But that gives you an overview of everything after the core 3 books. So the core 3 books of Savage Rifts, which I won't really go into at this time, are really just your player's guide, your game master's guide, and your bestiary. That's where I would start. But hopefully I gave you enough information on this stack that if you find yourself wanting to run more Savage Rifts, you should go out and know what you want to get. Each one of these comes with plot point campaigns set in the areas that they're at. They expand on an area of the world, give your players more options, and add more riftiness to your game. Yes, Padre, the WEG Star Wars is the best Star Wars TTRPG. And I know I've shared this before, but any RPG that was sent to Timothy Zahn and say, hey, this is all really canon right now, this should help you prep for your novel series, that's just the coolest honor I can think of talking about the West End game Star Wars. Like, yeah, there's a lot of love for WEG's Star Wars on this channel. But yes, John Doom, I love the fact that each one of these comes with a plot point campaign, and the Tomorrow Legion's field manual actually comes with 4 adventures: Murderthon, Tome of Destiny, the Contamination Principle, are all solo adventures, and then the Final Solution, which is a series of Savage Tales which you can expand out into a plot point campaign. But I like the fact that Savage Worlds gives you those plot point campaigns as a way to say, hey, here's what you can do in this area. And whether you run them as is, rip them apart for their individual pieces, or just use them as inspiration, they're really useful for getting a feel of what Savage Rifts is about. Well, that brings Riftsgiving to an end. We may have to do another Riftsgiving next year. Same time for whatever else is available for Savage Rifts. But thanks everybody for joining me on this one. This has been a lot of fun. John Doom, thanks for suggesting that we do this sort of deep dive into Savage Rifts. I hope it was enjoyable for you and you got information out of this. I would love to run Savage Rifts after we finish up our Rise of the Runelords campaign in 2027. I can only assume that it'll take till 2027. That's six books, man. That's a lot of stuff to go through. But Savage Rifts are Savage Pathfinders just as fast as Savage Worlds, so who knows? We may blitz through them much faster than I'm anticipating. So, happy Riftsgiving, everyone. Next week, we start Mal's Advent. Tomorrow, we'll start the posting on our Instagram. If you don't follow us on Instagram, go over and take a look. It's totally worth it for all of the cool stuff that we kind of post to and link to. And again, next week, we're going to do our big giveaway. I've got to just figure out how to randomize it well. So, until next time, stay safe, stay healthy, stay gaming. I am JM. This has been Behind the Screen, and I will see you all on Tuesday. Until then, have a good one, everyone.